Hello everyone, I am Percival A. Dulay, first year MAED, and I am tasked to report for our subject Advanced Educational Psychology with the topic the Information Processing Approach and Complex Thinking. The topic outline of my report, the Information Processing Approach and Complex Thinking, has three areas to discuss. We have first the nature of the information processing approach. Second, we have the attention, memory, expertise, and thinking. Then lastly, we have our problem solving. The intended learning outcomes of my report at the end of our discussion, I am hoping that we are now able to describe the information processing approach. We could characterize attention and summarize how it changes during development. We are also expected to draw some lessons about learning from the way experts think, explain the concept of metacognition and identify some ways to improve children's metacognition, discuss conceptual understanding and strategies for teaching concepts. We are also expected to describe several types of thinking and ways that teachers can foster them. And finally, we are expected to define transfer and explain how to enhance it as a teacher. For the discussion now of my report, we will start with the nature of the information processing approach, in which we have three definitions here. The information processing approach emphasizes that children manipulate information, they could monitor it and strategize about it. According to the information processing approach, children develop a gradually increasing capacity for processing information, which allows them to acquire increasingly complex knowledge and skills. This is according to Mayer and Alexander in 2017, together with Braithwaite. Another definition is the physical brain is compared with the computer's hardware, cognition with its software. Although computers and software aren't perfect analogies for brains and cognitive activities, nonetheless, the comparison contributed to our thinking about the child's mind as an active information processing system. So from the definition, it is being said that the child's mind or the child's brain can be compared to a computer's hardware, wherein his understanding can be compared to the software of a computer. Another thing that we need to understand about the information processing approach is we need to consider the cognitive resources. This is now the capacity and speed of processing information, defined as children grow and mature and as they experience the world, their information processing abilities increase. These changes are likely influenced by increases in both capacity and speed of processing. These two characteristics are often referred to as cognitive resources, which are proposed to have an important influence on memory and problem solving. So it is being said that as our children grow, we could observe this from our elementary students that their level of thinking and the capacity of their brain and the speed of their processing information eventually improving as they progress to higher levels of their grades. And it is being defined here that both biology and experience contribute to growth in cognitive resources. As children grow and mature, important biological developments occur both in brain structures. Another area that we need to consider in the information processing approach and complex thinking is the mechanisms of change. Under mechanisms of change, this can be explained by the three types. Namely, we have our encoding, automaticity, and strategy construction. For encoding, it is the process by which information gets stored in memory. Changes in children's cognitive skills depend on increased skill at encoding relevant information and ignoring irrelevant information. For automaticity, it's defined as The ability to process information with little or no effort. Practice allows children to encode increasing amounts of information automatically. And for the last type, we have the strategic construction. It is the creation of new procedures for processing information. Along with the processing information, it is also necessary for us to consider the following, namely attention, memory, expertise, and thinking. To start with, what is attention? As defined, attention is the focusing of mental resources. Attention improves cognitive processing for many tasks, from hitting a baseball to reading a book or adding numbers. This is according to Rothbard and Posner. At any one time, though, children, like adults, can pay attention to only a limited amount of information. They allocate their attention in different ways. This is according to Reynolds and Romano in 2016. Psychologists have labeled these types of allocation as selective attention, divided attention, sustained attention, and executive attention. Distinguishing now the four types of attention, we have first on the list, we have here our selective attention. It is the focusing on a specific aspect of experience that is relevant while ignoring others that are irrelevant. Another type of attention, we have the divided attention, which involves concentrating on more than one activity at the same time. Third, the sustained attention. It is the ability to maintain attention over an extended period of time. Sustained attention is also called vigilance. For the last type of attention, we have our executive attention. It involves planning actions, allocating attention to goals, detecting and compensating for errors, monitoring progress on tasks, and dealing with novel or difficult circumstances. I also took the liberty to include in my report the strategies for helping students pay attention. I am sure this might help us teachers to help our students with their focus and attention during our classes. So listed here, we have encourage students to pay close attention and minimize distraction. We could use cues or gestures to signal that something is important. We could help students generate their own cue or catchphrase for when they need to pay attention. We should also make learning interesting. Use media and technology effectively as part of your effort to vary the pace of the classroom. And lastly, let us focus on active learning to make learning enjoyable. After discussing attention, it is also important for us to discuss under the processing information approach, what is memory? Memory is the retention of information over time. Educational psychologists study how information is initially placed or encoded into memory, how it is retained or stored after being encoded, and how it is found or retrieved for a certain purpose later. Memory anchors the self in continuity. Without memory, you would not be able to connect what happened to you yesterday with what is going on in your life today. Today, the emphasis is not on how children add something to memory, but rather to underscore how children actively construct their memory. This is from Howie in 2015. The main body of our discussion of memory will focus on encoding, storage, and retrieval. Thinking about memory in terms of these processes should help you to understand it better. For memory to work, children have to take information in, store it or represent it, and then retrieve it for some purpose later. So for memory, we have our areas here. First is the encoding, defined as attention is a key aspect of the encoding process. This is according to Schneider. By focusing their attention, as children listen to a teacher, do homework, write a paper, read a book, watch a movie, listen to music, or talk with a friend, they can now encode the information into their memories. In addition to attention, encoding consists of a number of processes. Namely, we have first the rehearsal, deep processing, elaboration, constructing images, and organization. As defined, rehearsal is the conscious repetition of information over time to increase the length of time information stays in memory. Another is the deep processing. So, following the discovery that rehearsal is not an efficient way to encode information for long-term memory, Fergus Craig and Robert Lockhart proposed that we can process information at a variety of levels. So, these levels start with the shallow processing until it became deep processing. So third on the list, we have elaboration cognitive. Psychology soon recognized, however, that there is more to good encoding than just deep of processing. That is why the third process is being stated, the elaboration cognitive. Fourth is the constructing images. When we construct an image of something, we are elaborating the information. And the last process for encoding is our organization. If students organize information when they are encoding it, their memory benefits. So when you present information in an organized way, your students are more likely to remember it. Another area that we need to consider in developing the memory of our children is the storage. After children encode information, they need now to retain or store the information. Children remember some information for less than a second, some for about half a minute, and other information for minutes, hours, years, even a lifetime. So for storage, we have the three types of memory which correspond to these different time frames. These are sensory memory, short-term memory, and the long-term memory. Starting with the first type of memory, we have our sensory memory that holds information from the world in its original sensory form for only an instant. Not much longer than the brief time a student is exposed to the visual, auditory, and other sensations. The second type of memory is our short-term memory, which defined as a limited capacity memory system in which information is retained for just as long as 30 seconds. Unless the information is rehearsed or otherwise processed further, in which case it can be retained longer. Leading now to our third type of memory, we have our long-term memory, which is a type of memory that holds enormous amounts of information from a long period of time in a relatively permanent fashion. A typical human's long-term memory capacity is staggering, and the efficiency with which individuals can retrieve information is somehow impressive. So, as you can see, I have here a diagram in which how our memory is working from the three types of memory. From having a sensory input, it is being stored first on our sensory memory. Then, later on, it will be transferred to our short-term memory, which we tried to define that in short-term memory, the information can only be retained for as long as 30 seconds. But if this information is being processed or rehearsed, it will be stored to our long-term memory. Storing information in the long-term memory can soon be or later on be used if we need to. That is why there is an arrow here that points backward or back to the short-term memory, known now as our retrieval. In addition, I also included some strategies for helping our students improve their memory, which I believe can be useful for us teachers in our daily classroom atmosphere. So first on the list, we have here our motivate children to remember material by understanding it rather than by memorizing it. Another strategy that we could use, we could repeat with variation on the instructional information and link early and often. We could assist students in organizing what they put into their memory, and we can also teach them mnemonic strategies. What are these mnemonic strategies? Mnemonics are memory aids for remembering information. So example of this, acronyms, we could use common acronyms to memorize some terms or in order terms or definitions. And that concludes for our attention and memory. Another area that we need to consider is the expertise and thinking. Studying the behavior and mental processes of experts can give us insights about how to guide students in becoming more effective learners. This is according to Shanchulo and Sternberg in 2016, together with Newman, Lotz, and Eichhoff. Now, what is it exactly that experts do? According to the National Research Council in 1999, experts are better than novices at the following. First, detecting features and meaningful patterns of information. They accumulating more content knowledge and organizing it in a manner that shows an understanding of the topic. Experts also retrieving important aspects of knowledge with little effort, adapting an approach to new situations, and they uses effective strategies. So these are just some of the things that experts do according to our National Research Council. And for us to have a better insight on how our experts or how the minds of our experts are working, I have here a diagram that compares the mind of an expert and a novice. Okay, so from the diagram, it is now an example of how the information is being organized in the mind of expert and a novice. For letter A, it is the expert's knowledge. It's based on years of experience in which small bits of information have been linked with many other small pieces, which together are placed in a more general category. Now, this category is in turn placed in an even more general category of knowledge. The dotted lines are used as pointers, associations between specific elements of knowledge that connect the lower branches and provide mental shortcuts in the expert's mind. In comparison, in letter B, we have how information is organized in the mind of a novice. The novice knowledge shows far fewer connections, shortcuts, and levels than an expert's knowledge. So if you try to compare the diagram of an expert's mind compared to a novice, sa ating expert's mind, medyo marami siyang mga information stored. Marami siyang information linkages. Compared to a novice, medyo maliit pa lang. So, this information from an expert's mind actually comes from his experiences, developments along the years that he is on the field. So that wraps up with our two lessons for the nature of the information processing approach and also for the attention, memory, expertise, and thinking. Now, for the third lesson, we have our problem solving. So, what are the things that we need to understand about problem solving? Mainly, it is all about our metacognition. So, as defined, another way that you can help children process information more effectively is by encouraging them to examine what they know about how their mind processes information. This is according to Sobel and Letourneau from 2015. As you read at the beginning of this chapter, this involves metacognition, which involves cognition about cognition, or knowing about knowing. This is according to Flabel. So metacognition is commonly known or the study of metacognition is commonly known for the phrase cognition about cognition or knowing about knowing. Metacognition helps children to perform many academic tasks more effectively. Cognitive skills also have been taught to students to help them solve problems. Metacognition as the main character for our problem solving includes now the use of different strategies. That is why I included in my report some guidelines for helping our students formulate or use strategies for their usage. So first on the list we have here, recognize that strategies are a key aspect of solving problems. Another, we could model effective strategies for our students. We could give students many opportunities to practice their strategies. We can encourage students to monitor the effectiveness of their new strategy in comparison with the effectiveness of old strategies. Remember that it takes students a considerable amount of time to learn how to use an effective strategy. We could also let them understand that they need to be motivated to use the strategies. Encouragement to our children to use multiple strategies. And lastly, we could read more about strategy instruction and eventually share it to our students to help them formulate their own strategies. And this is the end of my report. Thank you everyone and God bless us all.